Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here, coming at you with another First Impressions video, and today we're going to be taking a look at Battlefield Hardline for the PlayStation 4. This title was sent to me by Atrevia, Portugal, so that I could give it a look and tell you guys my opinions on it. As you guys can probably see by now, this video is being recorded in post-commentary simply because the multiplayer gameplay is so hectic that I think I would have a really hard time doing live commentary over it. Having said that, however, what exactly is Battlefield Hardline all about? Well, taking into consideration the general idea that I have of the Battlefield franchise, and bear in mind I didn't really play Battlefield 4, I never really had a chance to play that one, so I'm basing my opinions mostly on my knowledge of Battlefield Bad Company 2 and Battlefield 3. I know that Battlefield 4 had quite a bit of a, how should I put it? Quite a bit of a messy launch, and not only that, but there's also quite a couple of people now that are saying that Hardline kind of feels like a mod to Battlefield 4. I will not be able to confirm or deny these kinds of things, because like I said, I haven't really played Battlefield 4. Having said that, as I was saying, my general notion of the Battlefield franchise is massive battles in huge maps with lots and lots of players, which I kind of feel doesn't really fit too well with the cops and robbers theme that they're putting onto Battlefield Hardline, because it kind of feels like a much smaller scale Battlefield experience than what I remember from Battlefield 3 and Bad Company 2, particularly Bad Company 2. I mean, the maps on that thing were huge, and you were just like running around with tanks and whatnot. So I'm not exactly sure what the idea was behind this title, particularly when it seems to me, after playing a bit of multiplayer and a bit of single player, it seems to me that most of the budget actually went into the single player experience, which actually feels a lot more polished than the multiplayer one and a lot more well thought out. Because, I mean, when you're doing the single player thing, you have a bunch of cutscenes and whatnot. You know, you have a cool campaign. I'm not sure how good the campaign is. I've only played like 2 or 3 episodes of the campaign. But, I mean, overall, the general feeling that I got was like, you know, if I was the kind of guy who likes playing first-person shooters, which, to be honest, is not really the case. I'm not that into first-person shooters to begin with. But if I was that kind of guy, I think I would enjoy that campaign. Because, I mean, during that campaign, you are playing this cop, and throughout the cutscenes, as the story is being played out and whatnot, you already know that there's going to be some kind of a twist in there, but I'm not going to spoil anything for you. But the presentation, the way that they present the single-player campaign, I think is very well done. Because, for instance, let's say you did episode 1 and 2, and you're like, okay, I'm going to take a break now, so you exit out of the campaign, right? When you're exiting out of the campaign, they give you a little teaser trailer of what's coming out, of what's coming on the next time that you log in to play on your next mission, which I think is kind of cool because it's almost like it's a TV show. And I think that's the kind of approach they wanted to bring to it. Now, whether or not players enjoy that kind of thing, it's going to vary wildly from player to player, but I thought that it had a very nice presentation to it. The fact that, oh, next time, and then they show a bunch of cinematic cutscenes of stuff that is going to happen in the future. So that is cool. And then the other thing is, when you get back into the campaign, and let's say, okay, now I'm going to start from episode 3, because I've already done episodes 1 and 2, it tells you previously on Hardline, and then they tell you what happened previously in a very short trailer of your previous missions. I think that portion of it is genius, and the presentation is just really, really good. The gameplay of the single player is also solid. I mean, the gameplay in general, when you're talking about the gunplay and whatnot, I think the gunplay is just flat out solid. I like the sounds. I like the way that the guns behave, even though I've only used a couple of guns so far, but I like the way that they behave. The guns are obviously customizable, both in the single player and multiplayer. They have separate progression paths, so there's a progression path for single player as well as a progression path for multiplayer, which as you play through each of the modes, you unlock different things. Like, let's say if you're playing single player and you pick up a gun from one of the criminals that you were shooting against or whatever, you pick up that gun, it unlocks that gun for use on your next mission or the next time that you find a tactical pack. Now, these tactical packs are spread out throughout the single player levels, and they allow you to change your loadout whenever you encounter one of those. So say I pick up an Uzi or something. That Uzi is now unlocked forever for use in single player. So as you're playing through the single player, you're also progressing and unlocking new weapons and, you know, stuff like that. Further on, you will also unlock stuff like a grappling hook, which I believe that is also going to be available in the multiplayer. I think I've seen a grappling hook in multiplayer as well. With a grappling hook, you can climb buildings that you would otherwise not be able to climb, and that will also become available for previous missions in the single player, where you can then like maybe get special objectives and whatnot. In the single player, there's also something which they call warrants. So whenever you go into a mission, there's going to be maybe 1, 2, 3 people in that mission that you're supposed to arrest because they have outstanding warrants. And if you arrest those people, you get bonus points and you level up and you unlock more weapons, unlock more things. So there's a bunch of side objectives that you can do. Beyond that, there's also this detective mode almost where you can scan stuff. You can also tag enemies with the scanner. I'm talking about the single player, by the way. There's a scanner that allows you to tag enemies so that you know where they are. It kind of reminded me of Far Cry 3, how you would pull out the camera and kind of mark enemies. It's the same thing in Hardline single player. You just mark your enemies and then you know where they are. But being a police officer, you get a lot more points if instead of just flat out killing all of your enemies, if you go up to them and make them surrender. Now that, again, is a mechanic that I feel is kind of cool, which is you just go up to, you try to surprise your enemies and just try to flash your badge at them, which might get them to surrender. But it doesn't always work, so you got to be careful about that. And also, when you flash out your badge, your character pulls out his weapon, and let's say you're flashing your badge at 2 or 3 people, there's going to be a chance that one of them is going to go for a gun. So you need to aim your weapon at all of them and then just start arresting them, you know, pulling out handcuffs and whatnot and taking them down. And it's kind of a neat mechanic, you know, and it forces you to think more tactically. You can also just shoot the crap out of everybody and kill everybody if that is what you want to do. But you have the option of actually arresting people instead. And I know that I'm talking a lot about the single player, and that is because I find the single player, if I'm to be completely honest, I find the single player in Hardline to be more interesting than the multiplayer. So as I played more of the single player and whatnot, there's also another thing, which is the scanner that I was talking about. It goes into this kind of detective mode where you're supposed to find clues to other cases, and then again, that also gives you additional experience and additional unlocks and that kind of stuff. So there is a lot of incentive, I feel, to play through the single-player campaign and unlock stuff and whatnot, and it is very cinematic with, and I don't mean cinematic like with the whole other different connotation that people give to it. I'm just saying that like they're working this very much like if it's some kind of a cops TV show or something. Whether or not you like that kind of stuff is going to vary from player to player. However, I should also say that the experience I've had in single player is heavily scripted. There's not a lot of dynamic stuff happening, particularly when it involves vehicles and whatnot. Like most of that stuff, if not all of it, is entirely scripted. And while we're on the subject of vehicles, I should say I did not like the vehicle physics at all. I thought the vehicle physics, at least in the PlayStation 4 version, I'm not sure if they're better on the PC or on Xbox One, but the vehicle physics, they looked terrible. Like, not realistic at all. And beyond that, the animations were just not smooth. It's just like you're missing a ton of frames in between the animations of a vehicle, like making a jump or something. It just, I don't know, it just felt very choppy whenever there were vehicle, whenever there were vehicle physics involved in a situation. Again, just felt choppy. Like there was this one level that I was doing where we were driving an armored truck and we were escorting this I'm not sure if he was a snitch or something, but we were escorting this guy to our chief of staff or chief of the police or whatever. And as we were escorting him, there were a bunch of cars popping up and whatnot, and we were just like ramming them. And every time I would go up against the car, it would explode. And the explosion wasn't even that realistic. It's just like this little and it's gone. And like there's no sense of impact. And I was just like, what the hell? Did I just like, it's like running over a dead animal or something. You just like explode a car, you know? It's like if Michael Bay was directing a movie of you running over a dead animal, there would be an explosion. There would be no impact because it's just a piece of roadkill on the floor. And that's kind of how I felt when I went up against those cars. So I kind of feel that they should have worked on that a little bit more. On top of that, in multiplayer, also the vehicle physics feel kind of the same as in single player. I mean, whenever there's vehicle impacts or whatnot, it just doesn't feel. I don't know how to say it. It just doesn't feel that impactful. It doesn't feel very realistic. It doesn't feel like it's animated all that well. So there's definitely something there with vehicle physics. Maybe they had some issues with the amount of resources available on the PlayStation 4. I don't know what the deal is. Speaking of resources and whatnot, you guys are probably wondering what kind of frame rate you can expect. For most of it, it seems to run anywhere between 40 and 60 FPS from what I could tell. But again, this is all from my eyes because I don't actually have anything that allows me to see what is the frame rate of anything running on the PlayStation 4. So I just don't know. But from what I could tell, I think most of the time it was hovering between 40 and 60 FPS. Graphically, the game looks good. It doesn't look bad at all. I think the textures looked fine. Again, just had a couple of issues with the vehicle animations and whatnot. But apart from that, I think graphically the game looks good. The characters are very, very detailed. There's a lot of emphasis like on character expressions and whatnot because, like I said, I think they've invested quite a bit of budget in the in the whole single player campaign experience. I think there's even a couple of famous actors in there or something. I'm not entirely sure though, but yeah. So the graphics are looking good. Now, in terms of the multiplayer, the servers were stable because I believe that there were a lot of issues with the servers in Battlefield 4. So the servers were pretty stable when I was playing. I didn't really get disconnected once, which is almost a miracle with my Portuguese crappy connection. You almost expect to get disconnected like every 5 minutes or something like that. I mean, because again, my connection is it's atrocious, okay? Portuguese ISPs are atrocious. Portuguese internet connections are atrocious in general. So the servers were running fine. I didn't really run into any lag. Beyond just, like multiplayer lag or multiplayer crashes and whatnot, the game hasn't really crashed on me once, which I guess is a good thing considering that I hear some really horror stories from Battlefield 4. There is some customization in your loadout, the kind of stuff that you can expect from Battlefield games. You can customize your loadout in multiplayer the same way that you could customize in other Battlefield games. As you complete objectives and kill people in multiplayer, you earn money, and you also earn these medals and badges for achievements and whatnot. And as you earn more and more money, as you kill more and more people, you can then unlock like additional weapon stuff, like additional sights, additional attachments, that kind of thing, so that you can customize your weapon. There wasn't, however, any visual like actual customizing your character, the way that your character looks. There was none of that. I mean, there were these patches that you are supposed to be able to use, which I've basically said, oh, put me with the patch of Portugal, but I didn't really notice any particular difference in my character. In terms of when you're driving vehicles in multiplayer, you can actually switch the camera to third person, which is something that I appreciate a whole lot. Because driving in first person is I just can't do it. Whenever I'm playing a driving game, I just need to drive in third person. But yeah, I mean, you have a bunch of modes that are themed out of this whole cops versus robber thing. There's this heist mode, which I think is probably going to be the most played mode, where your robbers are essentially trying to get a bunch of money off of these vaults, and the cops are trying to stop them from getting money off of the vaults. Then there's a couple of modes with hostage situations. There's some modes where the police are escorting a VIP that is going to be a witness in some kind of big, in some kind of big court case, and criminals are trying to stop the policeman and are trying to kill the VIP. So there's that. There's just a bunch of modes that you can play. There's also more typical modes like, Control and Conquest. Yeah, that's the name. They're like small conquest, large conquest. But overall, I just kind of feel that the scale of the battles is kind of small. So, I mean, if that is something that you are looking for as a Battlefield player, kind of like a smaller, more dense map, faster action Battlefield, then that is what you're going to get with this game. But if you want the more typical Battlefield experience with huge maps, tanks, planes, jet planes, that kind of thing, that's not really what you're going to get. As a matter of fact, a whole bunch of times when I was playing that Hotwire mode, which is the mode with the cars, I was just left like out of bounds, and I was driving so fast when I went out of bounds that I wasn't able to get back into the map fast enough, and I died. And I was just like, come on, it's such a small little area, you know? That's the problem that I have with this game, is that, for starters, like I said, I'm not a big FPS guy. But I feel that, I mean, people who want, the kind of experience of, close quarters and stuff like that, I don't think that is the Battlefield crowd. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But, again, basically, this game boils down to, do you want more Battlefield? Do you want, a Battlefield experience with the Battlefield kind of gameplay, the Battlefield gunplay and whatnot? Do you want that kind of experience in a cops and robbers setting at a smaller scale than your usual Battlefield games? If that's what you're looking for, that's what you're going to get with Hardline. If, however, you want, the grander scale of Battlefield, maybe you should stick to Battlefield 4. I really just don't know. Honestly, I don't know. And, again, my main problem that I've had with the game is vehicle physics. I kind of feel like they really need to solve and work on that. And I would also like to see maybe something that they could have done. I doubt they're going to change this now, but something that I feel could have been an improvement on the single-player campaign, which I know single-player campaign doesn't matter because everybody wants to play multiplayer and all that, but something that I would have liked to see in the single-player campaign was I would have liked to see different reactions from the characters if you took a more tactical approach to situations. Like, let's say, okay, I just did this mission where I arrested everybody, I had almost no fatalities, that kind of stuff, and then maybe your boss could say, oh man, good job, you didn't kill anyone, you arrested everyone, all that. Or if you go, off the wall and just murder everyone, you're like, oh my god, what the hell kind of a clusterfuck is this? That would have been a nice little touch as well, but I guess that's maybe too much work to put in a single-player campaign of a game that is mostly driven by its multiplayer community. I don't know. There's also those packages that you can get, which give you random stuff. Like, I got one, and it gave me a bunch of... I'm not even sure what I got. I got some badges or something. But yeah, you got those battle packs and stuff that you can get. And there's also a premium thing, but I didn't really delve too much into it. Again, like I said, this is for people who want a smaller scale Battlefield that is themed after cops and robbers. If you want that, this game is that. And it runs fine, the gunplay is fine, all that stuff is fine. If, however, you want the more traditional thing, you might want to stick with Battlefield 4. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. Leave me all your comments and feedback in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next one.